Monsieur Waters, vous avez la parole.
Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for receiving me at this moment of solidarity and crisis. I'm a musician, not a diplomat, and so I shall not waste this precious opportunity on the niceties of protocol. However, I will say that you must all be suffering from listening fatigue to a certain extent. So while I've been sitting there listening as well, I've been editing my rather long speech down to a rather shorter speech, but I believe the full text will be available to anybody who cares to read it at the end of this meeting. I appear before you as a representative of the Fourth Russell Tribunal on Palestine, and in that capacity I am representing global civil society. By way of preamble, I should say my remarks here today are not personal or driven by prejudice or malice. I'm looking only to shed some light on the predicament of a beleaguered people. The Russell Tribunal on Palestine was created to shed such light, to seek accountability for the violations of international law and the lack of United Nations resolve that prevent the Palestinian people from achieving their inalienable rights, especially the right of self-determination. One particular stimulus to our convening was the disturbing failure of the international community to implement and enforce the clear judgment of the International Court of Justice in 2004, contained in its advisory opinion on the Israeli wall, as requested by the UN. We met here in New York City 6 weeks ago on the 6th and 7th of October, having previously sent out invitations to all interested parties, and after listening to exhaustive testimony from many expert witnesses and after careful deliberation, we arrived at the following judgments. We found that the State of Israel is guilty of a number of international crimes. 1. Apartheid. The UN's International Covenant on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid defines that crime as inhuman acts by any government that are committed for the purpose of establishing and maintaining dominations by one racial group of persons over any other racial group of persons and systematically oppressing them. This finding by the tribunal was endorsed earlier in the year by the HRC Committee for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination in Geneva after submissions by the tribunal made both orally and in writing. 2. Ethnic cleansing. In this case, that crime includes the systematic eviction of much of the native Palestinian population by force since 1947-48. 3. Collective punishment of the civilian population, explicitly prohibited by the Geneva Convention, Article 33. Israel has violated its obligation as occupying power throughout the occupied Palestinian territory, including the West Bank, Gaza and East Jerusalem. Its most serious violations have occurred recently in Gaza with the blockade and virtual imprisonment of the entire population, the indiscriminate killing of Palestinians during the Israeli offensive Operation Cast Lead in 2008 and 2009, and now the devastation wrought by the recent attack, Operation Pillar of Defense. As I speak, I can hear the tutting of governmental and media tongues trotting out the well-worn mantra of the apologists. But Hamas started it with their rocket attacks. Israel is only defending itself. Let us examine that argument. Did Hamas start it? When did it start? How we understand history is shaped by when we start the clock. If we start the clock at a moment when rockets are fired from Gaza into Israel on a certain afternoon, that is one history. If we start the clock earlier that morning, when a 13-year-old Palestinian boy was shot dead by Israeli soldiers as he played soccer on a Gaza field, history starts to look a little different. If we go back further, we see that since Operation Cast Lead, According to the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem, 271 Palestinians were killed by Israeli attacks, and during the same period, not a single Israeli was killed. A good case can be made that it started in 1967 with the occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. This crisis in Gaza is a crisis rooted in occupation. Israel and its allies would contend that Gaza is no longer occupied. Really? The withdrawal of soldiers and settlers in 2005 changed the nature, not the existence, of occupation. Israel still controls Gaza's airspace, coastal waters, borders, land, economy, and lives. Gaza is still occupied. The people of Gaza, the 1.6 million Palestinians, half of them children under the age of 16,